Good day, everyone. On behalf of QSG, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar. QSG is committed to providing up-to-date, useful, and credible information on the topics that you care about. My name is Chris Skangas, and I will serve as your moderator for today's program. Today's webinar will be approximately 60 minutes in length. Derek will have a 45-minute or so presentation, followed by a question and answer session. If you have any questions during the webinar today, please use the chat feature or the Q&A feature, and I can ask all the questions to Derek at the end of his presentation. So now I'd like to introduce you to your speaker for today. Derek Churchill is a senior consultant with Quality Support Group. He is an aerospace lead auditor and a leadership development advisor. He has spent the past 25 years in the communications and management systems consultant industries. He has extensive experience in leadership development, management systems, communications, operations management, and regulatory compliance. He has worked with numerous companies across a broad range of industries, including aerospace, defense, medical device, plastic packaging, manufacturing, machining, food, wire and cable, synthetic materials, and microelectronic. Derek specializes in leadership and team development and strategic planning from senior to aspiring leaders. Derek also specializes in guiding organizations through quality management systems certification. So Derek, I'll turn it over to you today for today's webinar.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're able to join us. I was happy to see so many of you came out for this webinar on a new offering by Quality Support Group. A little more about my background. I've been with QSG for 14 years. Prior to that, I served in a number of leadership positions, various organizations, continue to serve in leadership in a number of different places. But along the way, in my 14 years with Quality Support Group, I've worked with a whole pantheon of companies, from a couple of companies with only 2 people to 1,000 plus and everything in between. And I can tell you, I've seen highly effective leadership, and I've seen leadership that was really had a lot of growth areas, some particular areas of focus, and kind of everything in between. So really excited to be talking to you today about leadership development. In addition to my work with the usual management system work that has been a big part of my time with Quality Support Group, I'm master certified as a leadership development advisor with Lions Lead. We're going to unpack with you today what that involves, the type of services that includes. This has been a really exciting partnership between Quality Support Group and Lions Lead to deliver leadership development, training and coaching services for all types of organizations. So it's not just a training experience we're talking about, but we're also talking about individual and team coaching. So a number of different ways we can serve your organizations around this type of service we're offering. In fact, speaking about services, specifically, some of the things we're offering is assessment and analysis. So every leadership development activity we do incorporates some level of leadership assessment. This is a very small, kind of a starter type of leadership assessment to very in-depth assessments and analysis for very senior leaders in all levels of organizations. Coaching, training, advising, individual and team leadership is a key part of what we're providing. And also we've been spending time in succession planning with teams, as many companies are kind of coming to a place of transitioning. Particularly, there's a lot of the manufacturing force in the US that is aging, not only operator level, but senior leadership. And we're spending time with organizations planning transition to the next generation to lead the organization. So talent is really a commodity in a number of organizations, actually every organization. And the most successful organizations come to realize that and make it a particular focus. Some interesting stats that 77% of CEOs realize that their biggest threat to an organization is around talent and not putting enough time into talent or having a highly effective talent in their organization. 67% of companies are now being asked to include talent as part of their earnings reports and as part of their ongoing assessment of organizational effectiveness. And then 93% of Fortune 500 companies believe that their companies aren't retaining the high performance talent they need to be successful into the future. And when it really all comes down to it, what we're talking about is leadership. And I read an interesting quote last week by a leadership development writer out there. And leadership a lot of times gets lumped into soft skills. And he said, leadership isn't a soft skill, it's a critical skill. And it is not just a run-of-the-mill professional skill, but it is critical for business performance and growth, and particularly to survive through challenging times like these. And that quote about soft skills was Simon Sinek, who wrote a book, The Why of Leadership. One of the things that is interesting about training, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this already, is you go through a training, it could be like a fire hose learning information, getting it thrown at you. But then the challenge becomes, how much of that do you remember after you leave the training? In fact, there's a pretty firmly established forgetting curve. And it says within about an hour of you leaving the training, you're going to lose about 50% of that. 70% within 24 hours and 90% within a week. In fact, I remember years ago, I was taking some very involved coursework, and they was stressing out about the test coming up. And I remember the professor saying to me at the time, well, don't worry, you're only going to remember about 10% of this anyway. It's like, why am I going through all of this work to only remember 10%? Well, that's where coaching comes in. Coaching helps us to retain and apply the things we learn around leadership development. We're going to unpack that more, but it's a very key piece of what we're going to be talking about today. So developing people, that's what we help you do with leadership development. But developing people for what? Whatever you need them to be, the leader that you need them to be in the area you need them to lead in. All right. And what we do is we come alongside you and we help create personal growth experiences for transformation. And so that the leadership development effort isn't just kind of a latest fad or something they learn for a little while and stop applying later, but it really becomes part of who they are. They're part of their being as a leader in the organization. It stays with them throughout their life. The first area of focus for us when we do leadership development is on leadership of self before leadership of others. And so a lot of times when we're doing assessments, people look at the analysis we're doing and they say, why do we spend so much time up front on ourselves when I've got this team to lead? Well, really, any issues you are experiencing with a team and leading that team comes to a root cause of how you are leading as an individual. All right. And that's always the case. Things like, how self-aware are we of ourselves? How do we have the ability to manage our emotions, particularly in stressful environments? Are we reasoned and rational in our exchanges with others and problem solving and enlisting people to the tasks we need them to engage in with us? Just a few of the areas we focus on. You can have people who achieve very highly, who accomplish a lot, but can leave a trail of tears behind them because they don't know how to get along with people, work well with people, inspire people to leadership. That's where we start because that's the root cause and the foundational piece for effective leadership. So a distinctive about the leadership development services we offer, we focus on behavioral impact. We focus on influencing behavioral learning, and we talk about inviting reflection and transformation. So this word behavior, you're going to keep seeing this. It's what sets the type of leadership development services we offer apart from other things you've likely done. Our behavior leadership development assessments and coaching revolve around focusing on behaviors. Research tells us personality is locked in around 3 years old, 3 to 4 years old. So then a lot of the work we do around personality-based assessment is really about understanding who we are and understanding how we get along with each other and work well together. But by having a focus on behavioral-based learning, you can actually shift the position you are as a leader. You can actually grow as a leader because your entire life, you can always change behaviors. So what we focus on is a foundational piece of who we are as individuals and as teams and as organizations. And we focus on key behaviors for individual growth and key behaviors on group growth, team growth that drive success for the organization. So really 3 areas when we talk about this. First, we're creating awareness, all right? Everybody we work with, whether an individual or teams of folks, teams of individuals, we are working to create awareness through assessments. So a lot of different levels of assessments, and I'll go into that more later on, but everybody starts by taking an assessment, and then we debrief them with an assessment to create awareness. Where are they now? We get the current state in their leadership. And then what we do is from that, we start to craft a growth plan. So that's stage 2, right? When we're talking and we're coaching with them about ownership and working towards application and accountability and owning the growth areas as well as the strengths that they need to work on. A lot of assessments out there today that you come across focus on just the strengths. And that's okay to know the strengths we have, but real key self-awareness, key transformational growth comes when we identify both strengths and limitations, the boundaries that we're in right now, so then we can push those boundaries out and grow as individual leaders. And then what we're trying to get to is a place of growth, achievement and maturity for the individual leader, achievement and maturity in the team. And really, we're trying to influence the culture, positive leadership from top down throughout all levels of the organization. So how do we actually focus and dial in on personal transformation? First, the work we do and the assessments we focus on appeal to the individual with unique insights. It really draws out behaviors that they're exhibiting currently, and that is really kind of eye-opening and really creates coaching opportunities for growth. We provide motivational support through our coaching and helping develop a personalized growth plan. We help create opportunities to practice through practical applications and strategies of how they can achieve success in leadership immediately and for the long term, for themselves and for the teams they lead. We're offering consistent and timely feedback, and that's where the coaching is coming into play, the regular coaching engagements. We're diving into the particular areas they need to focus on in the organization they're working in and the teams they're leading. And really, this self-reflection is very important. Any type of transformational growth includes self-reflection, a time where we absorb the results, absorb what we've been learned about ourselves, absorb the coaching we're receiving and the areas we're operating in, and what are the shifts we can make to better ourselves, to grow in these areas, to become the most highly effective leader that we can be for all areas of our lives. This is a very key slide, and I really want everybody to pay attention to this. When you see assessments, you're like, okay, well, we have an assessment, we have a one-off engagement, maybe some coaching, that's it. All right, it's much more than that. From one assessment, we can have multiple layers of impact in the organization coming alongside you to drive transformational change and affect the culture of the organization. Each person, whether it's an individual or with a team, because I'm going to talk to you about workshops, we debrief the team in a workshop setting. We debrief individuals one-on-one and go through the results. No matter what assessment level we're using, everyone starts with an assessment debrief. Then we work up through a personalized coaching experience, helping to develop a personalized growth plan in the particular growth areas and strength areas for that person to work on or for teams to work on. And then from that, we can generate a team debrief and really some statistical analysis that can be very enlightening for senior leadership. Also, another workshop we add on to this, or a couple of other ones, is team roles. So this comes from a Meredith Belbin, who did a lot of work with this back in the 60s and identified key team roles that every highly functioning team possessed and that people operated in. And what we do is we help you identify your key team roles and master the roles that you need to be operating in for your team to operate as maximum efficiency and effectiveness. That's its own workshop. Another piece of this is you've likely or may have read Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Well, from that, we've developed a workshop called 5 Functions of Great Teams. And we use Lencioni's material. And that also includes a team assessment, a particular team assessment around effectiveness for team performance. And we do team coaching there and exercises, but that all ties back into the individual and team assessments we are doing. It's a convergence of behaviors that we focus on to really drive transformation in your leadership experience and growth. And also, in addition, another layer for ongoing engagement is team coaching and facilitating, taking place in your actual team meetings, sitting in on those meetings and offering insights and after the fact or during coaching, and in some places facilitate meetings, particularly if we're having to work through some conflict and debate ideas and work through some team issues and dynamics. So those are the things that we can offer, all actually stemming back to an individual assessment. Everybody who takes a Lions Lead assessment and signs up for leadership development coaching with Quality Support Group will have a place on a portal that Lions Lead hosts. This is the Quality Support Group page there. This is actually my coach's page, and that's what you're seeing there. And you'll see there reports, you'll see worksheets, goal setting. You as an individual will have your own spot for as long as you're engaged. And you'll be able to go in there and generate and create a worksheet and a growth plan. We actually have additional training material and questions to spur growth. And then we actually coach, use this whole area as a coaching tool to support leadership development efforts. The other piece of this you see is particularly worksheets. And so these become very important. After we debrief and identify your strength areas, your growth areas from your leadership assessment, we work those into that. You'll see on the screen a leadership growth plan. And this is an individualized growth plan, customized to you. We can work with a workshop, 10 different people. Everybody's going to have an individual growth plan based on their individual results. But by each person working on their individual growth, the whole organization gets a lift because everybody has a focus on growing their leadership skill sets. So I need to talk to you a little bit about trusting the data. And there's a lot of assessments out there. Likely, if you're sitting in this webinar, you've probably taken a bunch of them. And you've seen different kinds. And one of the things that when you haven't taken the assessment yet is, well, how can I really trust that data? You know, is it just somebody thought these were really nice leadership skills to have and just put them in assessment and develop kind of their own little customized assessment tool? You know, how do I know that this is actually important for me? How do I know how I square up against the best and the most highly effective leadership? This is actually one of the strengths of the Lions Lead assessments we do. They are statistically based, grounded in a basis of deep research and statistical analysis, and also go through an independent validation that proves out the results your assessment delivers to you. So it is trust building before you even actually take the assessment. And then when you see the results, every single time I debrief with someone, every single time I coach them, we're looking at the behaviors depending on their scores, and they say, you know what, that's me, you're right. And then we start to coach around how that's showing up in their environments. But understanding is really important. So many of us, particularly if you're connected to the Quality Support Group, data is important to you. In the businesses you're operating in, it all comes down to what does the data tell us? And I'm here to tell you the leadership development work you'll take through us is data driven. It can be trusted that way. So relevant, we are actually looking at alignment with desired behaviors of the best. So all of the Lions Lead assessments were actually built on a foundation of the most highly effective leaders out there, statistically proven highly effective leaders. We took that research and the assessments were constructed on top of that. So if you think about a gap assessment, particularly if you've ever had us drive one for you, we may come in and do a gap assessment against one of the quality standards out there. What we do when we do a leadership assessment with you, we're showing you a gap assessment between where you are and where the most highly effective leaders are. And what we do is help you to get to those spots. Now, you may be somebody who's already highly effective in areas. And then what we help you is to sharpen those strengths. But for the areas of growth, we help you put that growth plan together and provide coaching to move the needle so you move into that sweet spot of highly effective leadership. Behavior-based, we talked about that. Behavior versus personality. Personality is fixed, behavior can change. It's really important to understand the difference. You can work in behaviors right up through your entire life. And so these assessments are really important because the assessments you take actually have about a 2-year shelf life, 18 months to 2 years. So when you take that, it'll provide you a lot of data for long-term growth for you and your team. Maximizing strengths and competencies for the team. I've been talking a lot about teams. Huge, really impactful team components here. Organizational components. We have assessments that can actually assess your whole organization. We have assessments that look at a culture of the organization. We have assessments that can assess aspiring leaders and help you identify what are the opportunities you need to put in front of them to help them grow into the leader you want them to be. The leadership development work we're talking about here can provide a framework for leadership growth in your organization, from aspiring leaders to senior leadership. And the last piece I talked about validated, it's really important. And then what we're looking at there is when we take an assessment, whenever you take an assessment, you answer statements or questions. Each one of those statements has gone through an independent validation effort. Lions Lead has actually validated 900 individual statements for their assessments. That is a ton of work that's taken place behind the scenes. If you craft a statement and they send it to and you're looking for a certain particular result to detect certain leadership behaviors, there's a whole industry that will tell you it's capable of detecting those behaviors or not. And when you send it back to you for adjustment, that's what Lions Lead has done 900 plus times. All right. And behind that, they were measuring 450 individual behaviors, and all those behaviors roll into 192 leadership attributes, key leadership skills that organizations and individuals really need to focus in on. So when we talk about this, what are the kind of the foundational pieces that we're looking to measure? Excuse me, end of the day, you know, it's been talking all day, need to take some drips, swallows of water here. But purposeful behaviors, and I've been talking about behaviors, think about intentionality. It's we're focusing on behaviors that really help us grow as individuals, that really help us lead ourselves. Lead ourselves as individuals, lead ourselves in our homes, lead ourselves in the work teams or any team we're on, in any space we're in. And so this is a point I want to bring up. Any assessment you take isn't just assessing you at work. The statements you answer will detect how you show up in leadership in all areas of your life. So I always use the phrase whole life leadership development. If you're here today, it's likely here as an individual, or particularly through a work organization, a marketplace organization, and that's great. And we'll focus on that with you. But in the coaching sessions, if there's particular areas, say, you know, there's an area that's showing up outside of my work that actually may be impacting how I show up at work, we can coach that too. That's the whole life leadership approach that these assessments bring to the table. It's really powerful. All of the assessments also focus on 7 character traits of top-tier leaders and 12 guiding principles that influence really high impactful culture. So diving that a little bit, we look at particular principles that we want to see in leadership, right? Humility. If you've ever read Jim Collins' 5 Levels of Leadership, and Good to Great, what he came to realize, his organization came to realize from research is their top level of leadership, their level 5 leader, are servant leaders. They exhibit humility. It surprised them that the most effective, the most effective performing top leaders out there in the biggest organizations in the world display humility. And that's a servant leader attitude that they bring to it. So we talk about that. And leaders inspire hope in the organization particularly with where are we going in the future? Something we need in these days right now with COVID, right? And the uncertainty, even a year in, we're all dealing with uncertainty around this, and especially as numbers start to spike up and organizations open and then close again, and everything around that. About inspiring courage in leaders is really important, and truthfulness, integrity in the organization. We want to see that as part of the culture. That starts with leadership. Leadership who shows, exhibits compassion, an incredibly important principle and trait for leaders to be exhibiting in these days we're living in right now. Honor, right? Isn't it great when you meet somebody who you come to realize an honorable person? You like working for that person. You like collaborating with that person, maybe being led by that person. It's a really important trait. And the other trait here is perseverance. This is pretty critical here. Perseverance really listed a grit factor, right? It's actually an attribute we measure in our leadership assessments. You want your leaders to be people who persevere in tough challenges and stressful times, like now, like the past year. You want people who, when they get knocked down, get back up, who have an eye on the prize, the organizational goals, and can keep the organization moving there and really take the lead. These are some of the traits we focus on for principal leaders. Very key. For cultures, I won't read all of these to you, but if you're here, likely you have a quality background. We talked about quality and excellence with leadership. That's really important. We talk about leadership itself in the culture, strategic direction alignment. You're hearing that wording and a lot of standards in there. We actually help you put a lot of meat on that bone and what that really means. And we also particularly, the really key skill of most highly effective leaders is they themselves become coaches. They learn to empower employees, just not delegate to employees. So we help you become a coach within your organization. So how does the tool work? How do these assessment tools work? Well, like I talked about, I've spoken to this a little bit. How do you square up against the best leaders in the world? That's in the assessments, and I'm going to show you that. We actually show you an area called the sweet spot, and those where the people regularly reside. We help you to move into those areas. This is a benchmark of extraordinary leaders. We show you how to get to those places. And we talked to you about validating the strengths and weaknesses. So we give you the whole picture of the leadership. Because if you are focusing on just strengths, you are ignoring things that could be sabotaging your leadership and sabotaging your organization. It's very important we also focus on growth areas to have a complete picture. And we also do the interpretation and analysis. Really, it's transformational conversations. We will have aha moments for you where we're talking about your results. We're talking about powerful questions in coaching, multidimensional questions that really get to the core of how you lead and some of the things that may be causing leadership struggles for you and leadership struggles for your team. And those are the areas that can really drive self-reflection for you. It becomes very important. So the engine behind Lions Lead assessments are what we call the CAB process. All right, competencies, attributes, and behaviors. Think of an analogy of a carpenter. All right, if you ever met a master carpenter, somebody who can actually build cabinets, maybe actually make furniture, just any type of woodwork, easily is at the tip of their fingers. Right? They didn't start out that way. And what they learned is they learned how to get there one skill at a time. When somebody gets hired onto a construction crew, they're taught how to frame, how to put up a wall, how to cut boards, how to properly put nails in, how to measure up boards and assemble a wall. They learn that skill first. And then they learn maybe how to roof, and then how to install windows and how to install doors. And then it becomes, maybe they learn flooring. And then eventually, maybe they actually get to doing cabinet making over time and customized woodwork. Over time, they develop a competency of carpentry skills. Much in the same way, leaders should be developing a competency of leadership skill sets. All right. So what we do is each competency of leadership. And so let's take, for instance, self-leadership. Self-leadership, and three particular attributes we focus on is self-awareness, manage emotions, rationality. Those are particular attributes within the competency in self-leadership. Behind each one of those attributes are behaviors that we measure and that drive how you're showing up in those attributes. And because each behavior is the result of the choices we make, in essence, we're actually measuring the choices you make. That's the level of depth we get into with Lions Lead assessments. And it's the engine behind these assessments, this CAB process. So for instance, this is a snapshot of one of our flagship leadership assessments, particularly great for senior leaders and folks who are looking to move into senior leaders role. It's called a Lead Right assessment. It measures 27 attributes, 25 on here. There's 2 individuals. This one includes 5 competencies. I've been talking to you about self-leadership. We also look at leadership essentials, critical areas for leadership. How do we get things done? And then after all that, we actually talk about leading others, right? All of this is focusing on how we show up as individuals. And then we also look at composure. This is self-leadership by extension. Do we practice reasoning? Are we critical thinkers? Are we methodical in solving problems? Everything we have talked about corrective action. Do you want more highly effective corrective action in your organization? That you don't actually coach and trying to solve the problem of the gap. You coach the individual. We coach the people. As a leadership coach, that's important. We always coach the person, not the problem. So when we do work in leadership development, as we help them to be more highly critical thinkers, they become more adept at problem solving and root cause analysis and long-term solution generation for your organization. Those are just a few practical applications of the leadership development assessment work we're doing here. For each one of these attributes, I'm going to go back here. For each one of these attributes, there is an attribute data sheet. So there's a lot of data in each one of these reports. This Lead Right report is about a 30-page report that you'll get as an individual. And anybody doing leadership development with us will get that report and really their own leadership development handbook that they'll get. And it's something that with the worksheets in it, and they can be marking up and note-taking and in our trainings and our coaching sessions. This is the book they take with them. It can be working from that. Each one of those attributes we look at as what is it? Why is it important? The why is important is why do we measure it? All right. We look at the desired behaviors for people in this particular attribute. We look at behaviors that we should avoid, the behaviors that can be pitfalls for us. We look at the result for that individual. Based on their score, what is the result? All right. And then we coach them from that result. Each one of these includes times for reflection and also recommendations for next steps. There are several layers of next steps for one of these reports. It starts with each individual attribute data sheet. At the end of the report, there's a worksheet plan that they can start developing their own work plans and doing some self-reflection and thinking about the types of leaders they are and the goals they want to set for their leadership. And then there's those worksheets I talked about, where we actually get more in depth and really saying we can set out a year or 2 growth plan with individuals and with teams and how they can really dial in some specific leadership gaps that they can turn into strengths. This slide here is really powerful and it's unique to Lions Lead. You're likely not going to find too many places out there that have anything like this. Let's say we're in here where we come in with a workshop and we assess 10 individuals. What we were able to do is debrief the group as a team as well as the individual scores. And this is one of those sample reports. So those same self-leadership attributes I was just talking to you about, this is how a team is showing up. And we're showing people, remember I talked about that sweet spot? These are the gold boxes. These are where highly effective leaders regularly operate. So if I was looking at this team and I was coaching them, say, you know what? We're a little inconsistent with self-awareness, knowing ourselves and knowing our effect on others. We need to do some work here, right? To close this gap. and that's a coaching point. The same thing about managing emotions. And are we, is there volatility on a team? Are we highly reactive? How well do people perform together? Just a couple of the coaching points that we can get into with team debriefs. These are powerful conversations. This is just one of the reports that we're able to generate from that portal I showed you. There's a lot of statistics behind, a lot of data behind to really hone in on the real growth areas for teams. When I talked about team roles, this is just a little snapshot of what we're able to do there. When we're looking about team roles, we're looking at the personnel traits and characteristics for the roles. We talk a lot about emotional intelligence. And so this is a good point for me to talk about this. You've likely heard about this out there. Emotional intelligence, EI, EQ, emotional quotient. Emotional intelligence is part of every assessment you'll take with Lions Lead. Particularly it's around their self-leadership. And it is really around the statements you'll answer to drive your assessment results. Those roll into the team roles that we'll talk about, so highly effective teams and how we're showing up on teams and managing conflict and team dynamics. And ultimately, though, we're trying to get to this, critical thinking. The most highly effective teams are filled with people who think critically. And what does that mean? That means people who avoid one-track thinking, who avoid groupthink, who avoid leaping at the first solution, right? The more critical thinker you are, the more highly effective critical thinker you are, you look at more solutions and the consequences so that you pick the best solution and the best course to take and avoid being back at the drawing board again and again and again. So really important key piece of what we do with team role development and team dynamics. Behind that for each, so the lead right report I mentioned, and this is in several reports, we actually measure how they're showing up in these teams, right? And what's the ability to coordinate teams? What's the ability to plan so people actually come up with ideas? And that's, we offer definitions to explain this. The ability to accomplish tasks and push things over the goal line. All coaching areas and growth areas for organizations. Another key piece of report around this also coming out of that portal with the team reports, we're able to take the whole team and show up as a 10, this was a 10-person workshop. This would be a debrief around team performance and team roles and showing up how they're showing up in their teams and what are the growth areas to drive team effectiveness and team performance. So when we're talking about workshops with Lions Lead, with Quality Support Group, and Quality Support Group has crafted some workshops. It's great because they're also available for grant funding, for workforce training and grant funding. If you've had a grant with us before, you're familiar with that process, these fit under that as well. And so our workshops, interactive growth experiences, we're focused, they're identified for both aspiring leaders and in existing leadership at all levels of the organization. In-depth analysis, evaluation, interaction, give and takes. Again, we're focused on strengths and growth areas. Individuals are measured to provide personalized growth plans, and for individuals and teams, all part of the workshop experience. Average workshop is about 8 hours, and at least for a lead right workshop or a bigger assessments. Average workshop size is 10 people. We can add more to that. We don't want to make it so big. And if it gets, if you're looking to assess 20 people, then we might break that up into two different workshops. And the reason is we want people to be allowed to participate. There's a real growth when people can have a give and take and participate and work through this stuff. And really, they can be, customized for any size organization you have. The experiences could be customized. It can be just a one hit workshop, but often we'll craft an experience where it's a workshop experience followed by coaching experiences for individual or teams or both. All right. And again, grant focus here. We help you to actually do a grant application with this, so you can actually get these efforts funded for really critical growth efforts in your organization. A little bit more about the workshop experiences. So lead right experiences, 3 kind of main workshops we're offering right now, and this will be growing as we go along here. First of all, I've been talking around the lead right. This is a lead right growth experience. It'll focus on areas of emotional intelligence, leadership traits, practices of management, critical thinking, and how do we apply judgment, which really comes down to how do we process the information for making a decision, and what's our ability to actually call the ball and be comfortable calling the ball and making those decisions. Critical for leaders. It's an important distinction, particularly in times of change. Right, and let me take the moment here and talk about the difference between leadership and management. They're critical differences. They get mashed up together. People assume that a management is leadership. Manager is a type of leader, but what we're talking about is developing leaders and leadership, all right? Managers handle complexity in the day-to-day operations. Leadership is about handling change and setting the direction for the organization and casting a vision and pulling in the resources to drive that vision. They have to keep an eye to management and what's happening day to day, but they're the big picture thinkers. And also, how do we get the teams to collaborate effectively together? How do we affect the culture of the organization for ongoing future growth? Those are the type of differentiators that we talk about and coach through and train through with our leadership development efforts. Team Right, powerful assessment. It incorporates self-leadership. We're talking about that. This is a core score piece here up front. It gets into 27 team traits, how the team is showing up and how you show up in particular when you're working together on teams as opposed to individuals. And then there's that team role piece I talked about here. So it includes, it's a really multi-dimensional assessment. It allows us to do a lot, particularly if we're in organizations where they feel there's a gap with teams. This may be the one we want to focus on. And then if you're looking to really drive leadership development focus down into the organization, into all levels of the organization, this is a great assessment, particularly as an entry point for leads on the floor, for supervisors, mid-level management, people who may be looking to aspire to senior leadership, or you're trying to get in a sense, are they right for maybe future growth into senior leadership? The core scores can be a really versatile and powerful assessment with only 5 attributes. It's part of the Team Right assessment here, but we're looking at that emotional intelligence, that self-awareness, managing emotions, rationality. We're looking at purpose directed. Are they clear about individual goals and clear about organizational goals and where they're going? And grit is that perseverance piece. What's their ability to get up when they get knocked down? What's the ability to keep chasing after goals, even in days like these, in this pandemic year we've been living through? Really important skill sets or attributes for leadership. One thing we want to put on the table is a next step. And we start to, as we're winding down our slides here, is, this is a good, foundational piece here today to talk to you about leadership and talk to you about the leadership services and assessments we have to offer. But you might want to experience it for yourself. So we offer a mini assessment experience, and we offer this up to 10 people, and it's a real assessment. And if you sign up for this, it's a free workshop. And if you contact us afterward, we'll set this up with you and schedule one with you. And we send a link out for you for 10 people you'd like to be in this. Up to 10 people take these assessments. And then we actually take you through a training and a coaching team experience. And it provides you actual real world data. It is not just a sample report, it's an actual report. You get a real report that you can actually start that day helping to grow your leadership and the leadership of your team. And it's also meant to give you a taste of really the powerful dimension of leadership development to be found in the leadership services that Quality Support Group offers. If you want to know more about this, Quality Support Group is a place under our professional development. If you click there, you'll see Lions Lead Leadership Development. That's the materials with us here. Or you can email us and contact us directly. My email is going to be at the end of the presentation. We also encourage you, if you want to learn more, you can schedule a consultation. Happy to meet with you. We can set up a Zoom. It's very versatile scheduling. We'll talk about leadership development strategies with you. We'll help to kind of identify your needs. And also we'll talk about grant funding options and what can be covered under the grant and the match and so forth like that. If you've never done a grant with us, then we'll take you through the whole thing and explain the grant process with you. It's a real great opportunity for organizations to do this without having to foot the whole bill for this growth initiative for the organizations. So, Chris, that's really that's the end of our training portion. I wanted to open it up. We're right at the 45-minute mark, and we wanted to take your questions.
Yeah, great presentation, Derek. Thank you. And perfect timing, right on the dot. So we had one question come in through the Q&A. Kevin asked about the group size, Derek. Can the group size be as small as 5 to 7?
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked with even smaller groups. That is actually, if you read books on teams, they actually say if it's, when you get to groups of 12 and so forth, that works some places, they actually start to recommend break those up into individual teams. So 5 to 7 is actually considered a sweet spot for teams. So that's, we can easily work on that. And I will tell you, Quality Support Group is an organization that practices what it preaches, right? Right now, I'm working with the Quality Support Group leadership team. Chris is one of those persons who've actually been going through this. They've actually taken the lead right themselves, and we've gone through workshops and coaching. We've been doing this for a while. And so this is, we can tell you this, how much Quality Support Group thinks about this, about this service to you, that they've invested in this effort in them for themselves, because they know how important leadership development is.
Yes, thanks, Derek. And it's been great. It's been great so far.
Any other questions, Chris, come in?
I don't see any other questions come in. Maybe we can give it a minute if
Okay.
ask some questions now.
So one of the things that'll come up, let's see if I can, while we see anything, and see if I can answer a couple of questions that come up. Typically, we're not just going to talk just about the assessment. All right. We talk about leadership, and we'll talk about best practices. And as part of, I will tell you, as part of, my ongoing development, I'm continually absorbing the best practices out there in leadership now, from books and applications and coaching. And so as we go through leadership development, we're going to keep you up on the cutting edge and keep you with things that are relevant. And not some just kind of concepts that maybe were 10 years ago, the things that help you succeed right now and grow now as an organization and as an individual.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Derek.
Yeah,
I also just want to point out that Quality Support Group utilized a grant, just like we can write for many other companies in Massachusetts and other states that can actually get this lead right assessment funded, or at least helped fund it as well.
Again, another question there, Chris.
Yep. So we are in New Hampshire, so the Mass Workforce Grant does not apply to us. Would the New Hampshire grants apply for payment? So Kevin, yeah, you must have just been, I don't know if you asked that before I said my little statement there or during, but that's funny. I can definitely work with you offline and we can look into that for you. So let's connect after the webinar, and that goes with anyone. If anyone has any questions for myself or for Derek, please feel free to email either one of us, and we can continue all of conversations offline as well. And then Derek, Maria just asked, do you have any book recommendations for developing the essential leadership attributes? The five essential
leadership attributes. It's a number of different places. I would say start with emotional intelligence. That's big. Anything by Dan Goldman, who's kind of considered the father of emotional intelligence, is big. I'm just diving into a book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, that kind of takes us to another level, a lot of practical stuff. But I would actually say emotional intelligence, anything by Dan Goldman would be something. Even if you look at that and read, you'll see, gee, some of this might have been read in back in the 90s, written in the 90s. That's okay. Absolutely relevant today. Also, another good read is Harvard Business Review articles on leadership. It's considered a 10 best articles on leadership. That really concise articles. It gets into emotional intelligence, difference in between leadership and management, how leaders should show up in the workplace, what it takes to lead. That's actually probably a great starter place for you. The Harvard Business Review's 10 articles on leadership.
Thanks, Derek. Yes, no problem, Maria. All right. See if any other questions came up. All right, well, if there's no other questions, Derek, then maybe we can end 10 minutes early.
Okay.
Getting towards the end of the day.
Well, listen, folks, you got my email here. It's Derek@qualitysupportgroup.com. Ask Chris questions, and if you'd like to ping me too, feel free to, particularly if you'd like to be signing up for the mini assessment workshops. You can kind of see this in practice. It is also, for more in-depth examination, you can look at leadership development at qualitysupportgroup.com. In fact, I'm going to show you what that looks like. Under professional development, this is the Lions Lead Leadership Development page. It'll take you through that, and it'll take you through some of the additional workshops information that can be found in some more detail. So I want to thank you for joining us today. There was a bunch of you, and really excited to be hopefully working with you on this and to help up your leadership game in your organization as an individual. And it's a passion of mine. It's in Quality Support Group. It's a passion of just supporting organizations and however we can. So I look forward to seeing you and the next time. So thank you very much.